So welcome everyone. Today we're speaking with Barb Stewart, author of The Caregiver's Guidebook, your resource for successfully navigating life as a caregiver. So before we welcome Barb, I just want to remind everyone of a few logistical details. The call is being recorded and you will receive a link to the recording after the call. Please mute yourself on your end so as to avoid any background noise. Please find your chat button on your screen. That's usually down in the bottom. It's a little thought bubble with 3 little dots. If you have any questions, please type them into that chat room and we'll make sure we get your questions answered. We promise to end the call around noon-ish or shortly thereafter so you can all get back to, I usually say, to the business of the day, but for those that are home and enjoying this extra time off, then cool. Whether you're doing business or just having fun, that's awesome. So we've started a new theme for 2020. Our theme is Inspiring Authors, and each month we welcome guests who help authors by sharing what they know. K is for knowledge, N is for new ideas, O is for opportunities, and W is for wisdom shared. Today's guest is Barb. Thank you. Welcome for being here, Barb.
Hello, everyone.
Barb suddenly and unexpectedly became a caregiver when her husband was diagnosed with a serious illness. The combination of the lengthy hospital stay and Barb's quest for information that was not readily available for the caregiver contributed to the creation of her book. Barb will share with us her clever approach to learning the ropes of promoting her book and embracing her ability to think outside of the box. And she's going to share with us some of the creative ways she's learned to monetize her self-published book. So welcome so much for being here.
Thank you.
We hope that by the end of the conversation that you and I both have shared information that the people joining us today can take away and use a bit of the wisdom that we're sharing to and apply that to, if they are an author, to apply that to the books that they have already published. So when you look back, Barb, on your experience, tell me a little bit about what motivated you to write your book about your experience?
I believe the thing that motivated me the most was my curiosity of, was I the first one that needed to know this? That was the question that kept occurring in my head. And I think everybody needed to know it, but no one asked it, or everyone had to go through the experience themselves over and over again. I believe the questions that I did interview other caregivers before I went into the setting, and they did share information about their journey, but not the details that I was looking for, like where to park, where to send a fax, where you get cleaned up, where do you sleep. And I felt those were really important things that a caregiver, especially in the hospital setting, needed to know, and then it expanded even into the home setting. So that was what initiated my idea for, I just started to write some of these things down and share them with people, and then people started asking me, oh, that's a great thing, can I have a copy of that list, like what to pack?
Wow. Yeah.
Going for an extended stay at a hospital.
So it kind of the experience kind of reminds me of, if I were to have a conversation with an insurance agent, I wouldn't even know what to ask until I start experiencing it myself. And so your need for knowledge sounds like that was the motivation that led you into that. Yeah. So what have you learned about, now that you have your book in hand and your book is out on the market, what have you learned about selling your book, basically? How have you, I guess, talk about some of the experiences with regards to your outside of the box thinking, and was it comfortable learning to be a salesperson for your book?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have to actually thank you. In our phone call, I was calling to ask you some random question, and that's when you told me about thinking outside the box, that you were impressed by that. Prior to that, I thought I was just making stuff up. So I would have an experience. I'd make something up, and then on the way home think, oh my goodness, I better figure out how to do this. Once you told me that it was thinking outside the box, I've actually, like, it's rocket shipped. I've embraced that idea that no, it is a thought that I have. It is something I believe in my book, and I'm trying to figure out how to share that with other caregivers and organizations that work with caregivers. So that was, I do need to thank you for bringing that to my attention. I don't consider myself a salesperson. My dad was an excellent salesperson, and sometimes I always wished I would have gotten some more details from him. I think what really I remember from him is that he was very personable with people. He really cared about the person that he was associated with, and he believed in his product. So I hope I take that away with it as well. I'm like a member of, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 network marketing groups, and I've sold nothing. I love the product. I use it for myself, and then I try to tell other people about it. So I think it's not uncomfortable when you really believe in what you're doing and what you have, and you want to share that with other people. I think that's where I come from. So,
well, and I think that fits in really well with what I've been hearing the last, 10 days, 2 weeks also, especially this time of where everything's in flux, is people are finding that what works best right now is simply being of service to others. What information do you have that you've either learned through life experience or education? And I think you really express that in the way you've approached how to sell your book. I mean, and this was long before we, entered this 2-week period that we've all been in. And I think the fact that you saw a need and you identified a need, and your audience kept expressing that need, and it allowed you to see this. So this is a way I can help.
Right. And I've really learned a lot through the process, which I hope we can share through this conversation with people. I was thinking about it this morning, and I thought of other authors, and I do know a few that when you get done with your book and you're so proud of it, and you're like, well, everybody, I'm going to sell millions of these.
Right. Yeah.
Just thinking that it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
And when you have to start creating that to happen is the situation that I got in, but it's joyous. It's really fun. The more they.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I was going to say, so what are some of the things that you could share with us that you have tried that when you started thinking outside of the box that opened up doors for you?
Okay. Well, we only have half hour.
Yeah. No, we can go as long as you want. Yeah.
Well, the one piece of advice is to tell everyone that you wrote a book, and not necessarily just going up and say, hi, I wrote a book, which does work as well, depending on the person, but even putting it within a conversation, saying, oh, I remember when I was in the process of writing my book and my husband came in the room. And so you're having a conversation, and then the person might say, oh, you wrote a book?
Yeah.
So you can always, no matter who it is that you talk to, I had that advice from someone I know. They said, just tell everyone that you wrote the book. The other thing that I've kind of learned along the way is say yes, and then on the way home, try to figure out how you're that. Another piece of advice is have a business card. So my business card has a picture on the front of my book. So it's real obvious. People really like that. And then on the back, I have the information. It's available at Amazon. It's available through my website, my phone number, email. That's a real good piece to have.
That's awesome.
I think the other thing that I've done is asking people, just kind of throwing yourself into the situation. I was in a casual lunch with the president of the hospital, a local community hospital, and she was talking about caregiving in her conversation and saying that they used to have a support group at the hospital. And so I went up to her afterwards and I said, you know, I wrote a book on caregiving, so I'm not necessarily interested in running the support group, but I think that I could launch the support group to start it back up for you and maybe do some workshops or other things that would help the caregivers. And she's like, oh, okay. So I'm like,
Cool.
okay. So there, that was an example. Then I'm like a deer in the headlights going like, oh, okay, what do I do with that? You know, so it just creates a whole new avenue. Giveaways. I remember asking you in the beginning, like, how many books do I give away? And you said, well, you can give a couple away to, you know, someone close, or maybe if you do a book signing. And I've actually given away, I'm thinking close to 80 books so far. And I do it very selectively. I've done it to people that really needed my book, but I made them work for it. I told them that they had to message me. I wasn't just going to send it. They had to message me. They had to tell me their story. And they had to give me feedback after they received the book. And what a blessing. I'm telling you, it was a great experience, and now gives me more stories to tell about caregivers when I give my presentation.
That's awesome. Oh, yeah.
So that was helpful. And giveaways. So the other thing.
Well, you mentioned presentations. So you've been speaking quite a bit.
Well,
A marketing
that was
tool?
the other thing. I haven't, not a whole lot, but I always offer. So I've done several book signings, all at different levels. So the first one, again, just putting myself out there. When I see someone having an event, I tell them, hey, how about if I do a book signing, or how about if I give a talk at your presentation? I always get really positive response. So my very first one was actually a presentation of over 100 people, and I gave a talk and did a book signing. The next one I did, it was a lot of family and friends and real welcoming, smaller setting book signing. I did one at a very tiny bookstore near me. It's actually a used bookstore, but they have a book club. And it was a very snowy day, so people didn't come out that were actually planning on coming out, but it was excellent. It was like a fireside chat. There was about 8 of them, and I got to really interact with every person that was at the book signing. So all different levels, but just putting myself out there. I saw a client of mine that was having a fundraising event, and I actually was going to be heading to St. Louis, so I couldn't attend. Otherwise I would have said, how about if I do a book signing at your event? Most of the time they say, yeah, they just set up a little table off to the side, which is great. So
that's value added for them too, to have you there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And it's correlated with what they're trying to raise funds for. So since I wasn't going to be around, I said to her, well, how about if I offer one of my books as a silent auction item? And she said, yeah, that'd be great. How about if we meet and you give me a copy of your book and some information? And it turned out it was like an hour-long meeting, and I got a whole new avenue of presentation going forward for selling my book to her organization. And it also prompted a package. And I think when you and I were first talking, you thought it would be great if I had some kind of folder or something to put the book in that I could give people that were in a hospital setting, that they could put other things in that you get at the hospital, your stack of business cards and other folders and pens and whatever. So I was thinking for the silent auction, I just didn't want my book sitting on a table and people with all kinds of greasy fingerprints on my book. And now someone's like, oh, wow, I just paid a lot of money for that book. Yeah. It looks so good. So I went to the store and I found a clear, expandable envelope, just a tad size bigger than my book.
Uh-huh.
So I put my book in there, put my pen in there. Oh, that was the other thing. So I have a
Yeah.
pen with my information on it, matching the colors of my book.
Of course. Yeah.
And it's actually really cool because I thought it could still fit in a woman's purse, but it could be something that a guy could carry around and not look odd. You could actually, it's big enough to put your cell phone in, business cards, whatever. It turned out really cool. So now I was calling this my new package. So the book sells on Amazon for $12.95. When I'm doing the book signings, I was saying that it was $15 just to make it ease for giving and getting, change.
Right. Uh-huh.
And now with my package, I'm offering it for $20. So I was at a meeting at a hospital making a presentation. I said, well, you could have my book for $15, or you could have the package for $20. And she's like, well, of course I want the package. So I have now increased my book from $12.95 to $20.
Awesome.
So,
right.
Things like that.
Well, and
yeah.
that little pocket folder, or and I know exactly what you're talking about. Those clear, expandable. Mm-hmm. They've got like a flap and a string. Is that
right?
Yeah.
Right, but this is a Ziploc, and it fits the book in it, so it's not real big. It's a little more compact.
Because when my mom was in the hospital, I mean, they're always handing you papers and sign this, and here's your copy, and all, and just having some place to put all that stuff. I remember that was just a godsend for me. I do also want to interject that when you were talking about speaking, you've gone the extra mile and you've attended Toastmasters. You've gone through the Toastmasters training. And so you've made sure that the presentations that you're giving are of a quality professional level. And I think that's important too, is to educate oneself as an author, what's the best way to get your message out there. And Toastmasters is fantastic for that. I'm not getting any fee from Toastmasters to say that, but it's a great place to start and jump in and, learn the structure of how to give a good talk, and a short talk versus a long talk. And so you did your homework and you went out there and it all lined up for you at the right time.
Yes. My first speech, I just had a 3-ring binder of some notes, and my husband actually videotaped the talk so I could see myself, because that's another thing that you need to get used to. And he said, wow, you made people laugh and you made people cry. And he said, that's a winner right there. So keeping that in mind, adding the emotion. And yes, I did learn a lot of that from Facebook, but again, where your belief system and what you wrote and what you're trying to tell people is really important. And sticking to a structure, having some basic notes, don't read anything, just come from your heart. And I did have a couple presentations where I had PowerPoint. I actually converted it into just pictures, and it was much more powerful.
Yeah.
Because I would just put on a picture, like I had a picture of a dog, and under his ear was a little kitten. And so when that came up and you hear the audience, oh, because it's just cute.
Right.
And tell your story, and it's also a reminder of where you're at in your presentation. So it'll give you a little reminder of telling your story that relates to that photograph. So I found that to be
and that's
successful.
A great tip, is to don't overload your PowerPoint presentation with words on the screen, because people will get focused on the screen and you want them focused on you, the speaker. And by using those visual cues, then they're, they get the heartfelt aw with the dog and the kitten, but then they're focused on you, like, okay, tell me the story behind this. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what are some of the other opportunities that you have found along the way that have just kind of landed in your lap? I know you've spoken with hospital people in the hospital setting about possibly having your book in the bookstores.
No, because then I only get half price.
Oh, okay. Well, so lesson learned. Yeah,
the big ride.
That's right.
So I'll be in the bookstore, but as a bonus.
Right.
So what I did was, I was trying to meet with hospitals that I either work at or I have a friend that works at, just to kind of learn the path of like, who's the decision maker, where is the money coming from, what are their needs. And so it was interesting because I walked in going, waiting for them to tell me, what do they need?
Mm-hmm.
And they would walk away going, well, give me a couple weeks to think about it. And I'd come back with a follow-up of thinking that they're going to tell me again what they need. But then I realized there was a confusion there, that I needed to tell them what they needed.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
it evolved into, because hospitals are all about data, getting information and looking at reports. And I understand that. So I came up with the idea of doing like a trial or pilot program, that if they purchased a smaller amount of books than the million books that, you know, they eventually,
Yeah. Yeah.
that I thought would just happen in the first meeting.
Yeah.
So I said, well, how about a pilot program where we could get some feedback from the caregivers that you give the book to, and then we can make a determination going forward if this is viable for the hospital, the caregivers, and me.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to I thought, now how could we get feedback from the person? So I went to the store and I bought a little packet of thank you notes. So I presented that of like, well, what about if we just put the thank you note in the book, give it to the caregiver, and even if they just sign their name, but they maybe could add some more information. That was my idea going into the meeting. And the person in charge of the meeting said, no, I don't want the thank you note. I want you to write a letter, size of the book, that goes in my little packet that they want,
Mm-hmm.
that tells why they're getting the book and why I wrote the book. And then they want another sheet of paper with a 5-question survey, because again, who fills out the patient satisfaction survey is the caregiver.
Right.
So but making it short, because as a caregiver, believe me, you don't sit in there filling out a 2-page
Exactly.
survey. So that was how we came about that. Then we were going to do a 3-month pilot program with that packet, and for 100 books.
Wow.
$20 a piece. My
Yeah.
new price.
Yeah.
So they were excited. I was excited, and I went home and I was having trouble getting through in another hospital because there was a lot of players.
Yeah.
So I had already followed up twice, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do, it was like 5:30 at night. I thought, I'm going to send an email to the main person, the vice president of nursing, and I'm just going to offer this pilot program that I just talked to the other hospital about.
Mm-hmm.
So I told her, thank you for all of this time that we've spent together. Here's a new idea. I gave her all the details. This is it. This is the package I'm offering you. And I thought, there you go. I'm done now. I'll move on. And at 9:48 p.m., I got an email from her of, let's set up a meeting and
Wow.
find the details. So I'm like, all right. So I thought then it made so much sense to me that that is now something that I can offer even virtually to every hospital around the country.
Yeah.
So it came from an idea to formulating into what works for your client, what works for them. But
well, it's very similar.
work.
Yeah, it's very similar to how media works, is that, getting to know what your audience, i.e. the hospital in this particular situation, what are they looking for? They're looking for a new idea. They're looking for a way to create a relationship with their consumer, which is the patient, the caregiver, and you offer that. And, whether for the people on the call, whether your book is directly targeting a specific audience like Barbara's, or a more generic audience, perhaps you have a novel of some sort, that concept still holds true. What is it that your end consumer is looking for, which would be the caregiver, and then the hospital is the intermediary. What's the benefit for the hospital in order to also reach that caregiver? And in your particular instance, it's, the hospital wants to create a relationship so that that caregiver is going to espouse, gratitude publicly and hopefully through social media on how great their experience was at that hospital.
Yes.
So,
The other thing I wanted to mention too was not only about receiving for myself, but giving. And I know when I did the book signing in St. Louis, so I said that I had the host of the book signing choose a not-for-profit organization
mhm,
that they believed in and wanted to help. And I said I would give $1 of every book that I sold to that organization, the non-for-profit. So again, you're making a great connection, and it was somebody that was involved with caregiving. And then we also did a 50-50 raffle at the book signing.
mhm.
So it got everybody that was there excited and get something out of it, as well as then we decided on a different, one of the girls that was helping me in the book signing was the one that decided of who would get the other portion of that 50-50 raffle. So again, you're making another connection with another organization.
Right.
So you're just expanding your base of people that need to know about your book and what you have to
Exactly.
offer.
Exactly. So before we move on, I just want to make sure, are there any other opportunities that you wanted to share, any other experiences before we kind of get into the end of our conversation? So I know you've had some great luck with the hospitals and and speaking in your packet. I love that idea of the package. So when looking back over the entire experience, what is that little bit of wisdom that you'd like to share with the people that are on the call listening in today, of when they're not sure what to do next, what would you suggest?
I say definitely start out with believing in yourself, believing in your end product, and really believing that you can make a difference, you can make a connection with people, which is why you did this. You poured your heart out and you have something that, maybe you'll give someone just a cozy night, an escape. I also teach introduction to meditation. I teach what meditation is.
Mhm.
And a lot of people that are very overwhelmed by meditation, I always give them a very simple example of what meditation represents, and it's reading a book. Because when you read a book, you become very immersed in the story. And then sometimes, and you don't think about anything else that's going on. That's your time, your escape. And then sometimes you find yourself 3 pages ahead and didn't realize what it was that you read. So you gently go back and you come back through it. That's exactly what meditation is. That's exactly the same process as meditation. So even understanding and giving people that opportunity, because people get excited to know that reading a book is a form of meditation. And right now in our country, it's what we need.
I love that. Yeah.
So I think just that is the basis of who you are as an author and what you did and what gift you're giving people. And then once you get to that point, I think it just makes it easier, again, talking about telling everybody what you did. Be proud of yourself, of what you did, and that you're an author, and somehow fitting that in with everybody that you talk to, because you don't know who they are, who they're related to, or what idea that you could have to expand selling your book besides just, oh, I hope someone clicks on that.
Right. No, I love that. It gave me goosebumps. Just that analogy between meditation and as an author, how one can facilitate that and, you know, bring someone into your world and let them escape for a moment, whether it's a novel or whether it's a book of photography or whether it's an actual caregiver's handbook, whether it's
Right.
something they need to learn now or, yeah. Yeah, I
And I
love
think
that.
the other thing of just not being afraid, just really do something, whether you think it's silly, you're going to make a fool out of yourself. People are going to go, are you kidding me? No way. I've never had that happen. So really just kind of going outside of the box
Mhm.
and coming up with an idea of like, hey, how about if I do this? And really, most of the time, people, especially you're an author. I mean, people are excited to have you as part of their life. So just don't be afraid. Just
No,
do something, even if it's silly.
I love that. Yeah. Well, you've given us some awesome information today and awesome ideas. I know that everyone who's on the call today and whoever listens later is going to take away at least 2 or 3 tidbits of action items to start on for themselves. I want to thank you very much for being here. I want to ask the people on the call, we've had a couple of people drop off right at 12, but if there's anyone that does have any questions, please drop it into the chat box real quick before we end. And Barb, thank you so much. Your information was amazing. Thank you for taking time to be with us today. And there will be a follow-up email tomorrow that has all of Barb's contact information in case you have any additional questions for her directly, and you'll be able to reach out and create a relationship with Barbara. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I couldn't have done it without you. And
oh, thank you.
Organization, seriously.
I'm so glad that Tim connected us. Lifetime friendship. Thank you so much.
Right. You're welcome. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. We'll talk later.